A new report published in JAMA based on the NHANES dataset shows that we're kind of going the wrong way when it comes to eating ultra-processed foods. Over the past 20 years, consumption of ultra-processed foods in kids has gone up. Not down, but up. And this is despite knowing how concerning these ultra-processed foods are. What are we doing wrong? What are we as a country in the United States doing wrong, although it's likely being mirrored elsewhere in other countries? And what can we do differently to stem this? Because we have to. Otherwise, we're only going to see increasing incidence of obesity and diabetes and other chronic diseases at younger and younger ages. I'm Dr. Brett Scher, the medical director at DietDoctor.com, and I got to admit, this is pretty depressing to see these types of statistics, knowing how bad ultra-processed foods are, the vast majority of them are, and to see consumption in kids going up. So here's what the study did. Let's start with the details. Published in Journal of American Medical Association, JAMA. And what they did was they looked through this big, huge NHANES data set. There was data collected by a 24-hour food recall in 1999, and then done again in 2018. And this was specifically for kids aged 2 to 19. Now, I'm not sure how they did it for kids aged 2, a 24-hour recall. Hopefully the parents were involved in those. But average age was 10 for all the people they evaluated. And what they found was the estimated percentage of total energy consumed from ultra-processed foods increased in that 20-year period from 61.4% to 67%. And the total energy consumed from unprocessed or minimally processed foods decreased from 28.8% to 23.5%. So definitely moving the wrong way. And they also showed the percent of calories from ready-to-eat or ready-to-heat ultra-processed foods went from 2.2%, so pretty low 20 years ago, to 11.2%. That's a pretty dramatic increase. The one good news was that estimated percentage from sugar-sweetened beverages went from 10.8% to 5.3%, so a pretty dramatic decrease there. But on the flip side, consumption of sweet snacks and sweets increased from 10.7% to 12.9%. All right, so a bunch of numbers, a bunch of percentages, but you can see aside from sugar-sweetened beverages, everything has gone the wrong way. Now, this next point was interesting because I don't know, my bias has sort of been like, yeah, it's because of a big part of it is because of marketing to poor socioeconomic class, maybe one parent household where someone's not home to cook. So the kid is just out and trying to grab and fend for themselves, and that there would be a higher percentage there, right? It would sort of trend that direction. But no, this study found it did not matter parental education level or family socioeconomic class, family income level, didn't matter, which shows just how pervasive this problem is. So why is it so pervasive? Well, there's price, it's cheap, it's easy. There's marketing, there's billions of dollars spent on marketing these foods. And just walk into any grocery store and see the prominent position of all these ultra-processed foods. And if you live in an area where you're basically just going to your corner market, the corner market is full of ultra-processed foods. I mean, just hundreds of different varieties. So it's daunting to see these numbers going the wrong way, seeing how pervasive it is, and trying to come up with an approach. Now, there are some countries who have started taxes, whether it's a sugar-sweetened beverage tax or there's this nutrients of concern tax. Now, that's a bit of a problem, though, because fat can get lumped in together, or even carbohydrates getting lumped in together. Well, if you're talking about added sugar, or if you're talking about ultra-processed combined sugar and fat, well, those make a lot more sense. But if you just talk about fat in general or saturated fat in general, I think that's like a big part of the problem. What's gotten into this problem is if we're demonizing minimally processed or unprocessed animal foods and trying to steer people away from those have nutrients, those have protein, those are filling and have satiety, and that's what we want people eating. If you look at the protein leverage hypothesis, if you're not getting enough protein, your body is driven to overconsume calories, and these hyperpalatable foods are front and center for people to start eating. They're low in nutrition, they're low in protein, low in fiber, basically absent of nutrition, but high in calories, high in energy density, and high in psychological reward. The studies have shown how it lights up your brain in psychological reward, and that's a perfect storm. So do we tax these foods? Taxes are a slippery slope. Or do we subsidize the healthier foods, the less processed foods. So, fruits and vegetables should be cheaper than these ultra-processed foods. Meats, eggs, dairy should be cheaper than these ultra-processed foods. So however we get it, cheaper and more available, I should say, and more promoted. I mean, the fact that you can drink chocolate milk in school but can't drink whole milk, this still seems absolutely absurd. So what we're doing is we're training kids to gravitate towards the ultra-processed, the high sugar, the combined sugar and fat type of product. And whether we're doing it purposely or not, that is what's happening because that's where they're turning. So I think the solution has to be multifactorial, whether it's, taxing more dangerous foods, well, ultra-processed foods I think can be pretty well agreed upon. No matter what the ingredients are, ultra-processing should be avoided and there should be a health tax on that. Whether it's subsidizing the healthier foods, less processed, that's also certainly reasonable. But also regulations on marketing and on product placement, perhaps, for these ultra-processed foods. And of course, education, but not the education that meat is bad, animal products is bad, because that is self-defeating and that is helping get us into this position. The one thing that vegans and keto can all agree on is that ultra-processed foods are harmful and should be avoided. So if we could focus attention on that and less infighting, if you want to eat meat in a healthy, minimally processed way, by all means do it. If you want to be plant-based in a healthy, minimally processed way, by all means do it. That's where we need to come together and fight the common enemy of the added sugar, the ultra-processed foods, the sugar-sweetened beverages. That unified front is what we need to solve this problem. And the constant fighting and bickering and arguing about who's right and who's wrong and whose camp or whose religion is better, that's just not serving a purpose. So a little bit of a rant today, but hopefully you see my point and hopefully we can sort of rally together against the common enemy, because this type of data is really sobering about what's happening to our children, to our kids, and what that means for the future. All right, if you thought this was helpful, please click the thumbs up button and subscribe so you'll get all our updates here on Diet Doctor News on YouTube. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great day.